Hello, William and Elizabeth. Thank you so much for coming into my office today. William, I know you have a very busy work schedule at the hospital, so I appreciate you making the time for this meeting. As you know, we have been working with each other for the past few weeks constructing a financial plan. And today specifically, I would like to discuss with you two of the key points which I think will be important in allowing us to reach our long-term financial goals. As I think about the big picture for you two, first of all, I would like to point out that you're well positioned to achieving financial success in the future for you and your children. So please think about these key points that we're going to talk about today as some of the things we could do to mitigate the risks that could derail our progress. In the next few years, you two will likely grow your net worth significantly from a combination of income, savings, investments, and Elizabeth's inheritance. And of course, that's combined with sound financial planning steps, which you two have taken already. And I think it's crucial that we pay attention to protecting those assets that are accumulated for achieving your financial goals. So, William, you currently have enjoyed a very high and stable income from employment, and Elizabeth is able to generate income from her online auction business as well. In our past discussion, I've congratulated Elizabeth for having achieved the success that she's had, and I look forward to seeing her business grow even more this year. However, one of the biggest challenges that I see right now is that your emergency fund is way underfunded. From what I have heard from you, William and Elizabeth, you want to maintain an adequate emergency fund of 6 months living expenses, which I have calculated for you to be about $45,000, $44,438.50 to be exact. Now, right now, I want you to think about how much you have in your actual emergency fund. It's probably very little. And from what I gather from your financial statements, you two have only $5,000 saved up for the emergency fund, which is currently your money market account. Now, I'm going to make an important point here that the lack of an adequate emergency fund really adds risks to your short-term and long-term financial goals. And I think we can do a lot toward avoiding those risks. Just as important as paying off consumer debt, which we have already talked about, you too should find a way to increase your emergency fund to an adequate level. In reviewing your cash flow situation, I know it takes time to build an emergency fund, but it's important that we make this one of our highest priorities going forward. For example, when Elizabeth receives the funds from her inheritance, I strongly recommend that you adequately fund your emergency reserves as soon as possible. The next thing I'm going to talk about is insurance coverage, and specifically liability insurance. So I want you to think about all the things that could really, throw a wrench into the progress that we have made in securing a sound financial position for you guys. If someone, for example, a neighbor, just takes a walk outside of your yard, slips and falls, and sues you, that could really add a lot of unnecessary risk to the assets that you have worked so hard to accumulate. And what I'm going to review, first of all, is your automobile insurance. And in my opinion, you two right now have what's considered adequate automobile insurance. You have a 100, 300, and 50,000 policy. 100,000 bodily injury for one person, 300,000 bodily injury for all persons, and 50,000 property damage. That is considered adequate, but I think we can do even better than that. Now, with all the expensive cars that you have in your neighborhood, for example, I know a lot of the neighbors drive Audis and BMWs and Mercedes from talking to you, William. I think $50,000 is on the low end of what's necessary to cover property damage. So I highly recommend bumping that up to $100,000, and I think you can price it out with your insurance broker. Given your excellent driving record in the past, both of you, William and Elizabeth, I think the added cost of having this coverage should be minimal considering your cash flow. on a month-to-month basis. Now, adding to the liability coverage, I think you too should get an umbrella policy. A personal umbrella policy is very important for protecting your assets outside of those covered by a liability automobile insurance. Now, let me give you an example. Suppose someone gets injured in an accident and you are liable. Your policy will cover, like I said, 100, 300, and 50,000 for property damage. What if you're liable for $1 million or $700,000? You are responsible with your assets to make up for the difference outside of the limits of your insurance policy. So this is where a personal umbrella policy really kicks in. What it does is it protects you outside of the limits set by your automobile insurance policy. So in this case, if your automobile insurance covers only $100,000 of the liability and you are on the hook for $1 million, then $900,000 will be covered by a personal umbrella insurance policy. And from my experience, a personal umbrella insurance policy is a very inexpensive way to protect your assets in case you're liable for damages. So I highly recommend that you talk to your insurance broker and price out a personal liability insurance policy that's appropriate. What I recommend for you right now is protecting your assets in whole and use that as the amount of the coverage for your personal umbrella insurance. As your asset grows, you can also update that and increase the amount that's covered. So you always want to protect your assets so that in case someone sues you in court, they don't come after your assets. Now, the next thing I'm going to talk about in addition is Elizabeth's business. I know she's done a tremendous job in terms of growing her business operationally, but one of the key risks I still see is that someone can come after her assets because currently she operates as a sole proprietorship. So in my financial plan, I highly recommend that she restructures her business as a single member LLC instead, a limited liability corporation. That gives protection to her personal assets so that in case she gets sued by a client, for example, they will not be able to attach her personal assets. Okay, so let's just go over the things we discussed today. Okay, first of all, we discussed adequately funding an emergency fund as a priority. Second, we talked about having adequate liability insurance in the form of higher automobile liability insurance and getting a personal umbrella policy to protect your assets that are not covered by your automobile liability insurance. And lastly, we talked about restructuring Elizabeth's business so that it does not pose as a risk to your personal assets. So I want to give you guys a little bit of homework to do in the following week. So please talk to your insurance broker, price out those policies, and discuss with an attorney on how to restructure Elizabeth's business. I think those things are very simple and straightforward to do, and let's follow up in a couple of weeks. Okay, all right, thank you so much. Bye-bye.